Hello, this is Daniel Crawford, and welcome to the Inequality Chronicles. So, what are my thoughts about inequality right now? One may ask. Well, I was going to record an episode about a week or two ago regarding the right to work fight, and anyone who pays attention knows that that is far from over. Here in Ohio, Republicans in our state legislature are actively working right now to try and draft a bill and bring it to the governor's desk. After last year's presidential primary, the governor seemed to backtrack a little bit as to his support for this measure. I don't know if he sees some kind of political comeback in the future for himself, or maybe he's just trying to ride off into the sunset in as positive way as possible. Maybe that could explain some of his recent, policy approaches, like with respect to healthcare and whatnot. But that is still actively a fight, and in my view, we need a strong counter message to oppose that. We need that counter message on every level of government to oppose these measures, whether it's right to work, or attacking local firefighter unions and other public unions or unions in general on a local level, or attacking our social safety net on a federal level. We need some kind of counter message, not just an opposition or a resistance, if you will, but something positive to offer in response. And this has been one of the frustrating points for progressivism for past few years now, maybe even the past 2 or 3 decades. It has been one of our points of frustration. And over the longer view, I'm new to this fight. I'm only 32 years old. I've only been registered to vote for 14 years of my life, so I've only been in this fight as a progressive actively for at least the past 14 years. And I've been more and more progressive over time. So it's taken to evolve to this point. But there was once a time when I used to buy hook, line, and sinker the Democratic Party and everything that it sold. And for whatever it's worth, there are some good people who are in the Democratic Party locally and statewide and even nationally, I could even argue. But I, as a lifelong Democrat, have seen that. But over time, I've learned that it can be wrong too, and wildly wrong, on some issues. And a lot of where it's wildly wrong on the issues is where the party is a cowardly representative of the progressive movement. Lacking a backbone for the past 3 decades at the very least, the Democratic Party has allowed the Republicans to define where they stand on the issues. They've even allowed the Republicans to deem liberalism as some kind of heretical representation of American politics. It is heresy in American politics to be a liberal. And that is most unfortunate. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is to develop a backbone. And how do you develop said backbone? By listening to the working people of this country. Last year, during the presidential primary process, we had, a lot of you out there are probably tired of hearing this, but we had someone in Bernie Sanders who at least seemingly listened to the American people. But he's far from the only one. Before the primaries sort of tarnished her record, Elizabeth Warren even had that same record. But, of course, where she tarnished her record was by appearing to turn her back on the more progressive candidate in the presidential primary. And a lot of progressives have put themselves in a position where they just cannot forgive her for that. But as a friend pointed out to me today, as the standard bearer of the party in the future, it may be too late for Elizabeth Warren. And although I personally don't have a problem with the age of a candidate as long as they're of good health and able to competently approach things, a number of people out there are concerned about Mrs. Warren's age, or Senator Warren's age. She is in her 60s, I do believe. Senator Sanders is going to be in his late 70s by the time 2020 rolls around. And although I would personally vote for him again, we do need young blood, if you will. So there's that. We need a change of leadership at every level of the Democratic Party, if the Democratic Party is going to be the standard bearer of progressivism. And sadly, because of the way the code is written, because of the way our system exists and how it was designed for a nonpartisan election process at pretty much every level of government, we're trapped with the two-party system. And unless we abandon the two parties and throw them out the window, or we amend the Constitution to permit a multi-party system through proportional representation, until we reach that point, we have to choose either the Republicans or the Democrats, sadly. Or abandon all of them. One of those two. So, being pragmatic as I am, which I know to some people doesn't seem to coincide very well with my idealism that I have, I recognize that there is a need to look at the Democratic Party and figure out a way to drag it kicking and screaming back to its roots. We have to bring it back to its foundation, to the working class foundations that at least at one time claimed to hold up to. I mean, it has never been a perfect representative of the American people, of the working class, ever. It has had a checkered past throughout its history, but it is possible to make it represent us. Because if the Democratic Party does not clean up its act and wake up, we are going to find ourselves in a one-party state. At least a de facto one-party state. Because one party will be effectively dead in its ability to achieve everything it needs to achieve to get the majorities that it needs and to regain the presidency. And not only that, but also regain control of a significant number of states and to gain traction on the local level as well. The infrastructure of the Democratic Party is fragmented. It has fallen apart. And this predates President Obama, so one can't even put it all on him. But it really culminated during the tenure of President Obama. And a lot of that could be blamed, sadly, on his feckless leadership with respect to building a strong Democratic Party. He hedged too much on the things that he cared about. Because one of the other things that he cared about was trying to be post-partisan. And that's fine. That vision is fine, but it's not practical. Not when the other party has no interest whatsoever in working with you. So we have to recognize that while individual Republicans are good people, especially individual Republican citizens, the party as a whole is a cancer to our political system. But the Democratic Party right now, as it exists, and as it refuses to listen to the American people, and as it caters to the same interests which own the Republican Party, the Democratic Party is not much better. Because it has refused to fill a void that has been sitting there waiting, a void within the American people, within the working class. Because it has refused to fill that void adequately, it has created another political cancer, if you will. And these parties, one that is pretty much right now under Trump actively working to destroy our representative democracy, and the other which isn't doing its job of defending that democracy and then making it stronger, the combined effect of that is that our system has been corroded. It is now falling apart at the seams. We are left with this demagogue who is taking us through seemingly uncharted territory. And he is just acting as a wrecking ball, just demolishing everything in his path. But it's not enough to point out what Trump is doing. It's not enough to point out what ultra-conservative members of the U.S. Senate or U.S. House or even governors across the country or state legislatures or even mayors and city councils and what have you. It's not enough to point out what they are doing bad and say, vote for us. We're not them. We're better than them. We need to demonstrate how we're better than them. We need to demonstrate that we have a vision to offer. Now, of course, these visions will be largely dependent on what each individual candidate stands for. But we have to facilitate an atmosphere that is conducive for producing this productive system. For producing a party which represents fully and wholeheartedly the soul of the American people, of the working class. This party that we need, the Democratic Party that we need right now, does not exist. And as we continue to sit here and think, oh my God, we got to protect Nancy Pelosi, or we have to protect Hillary Clinton, or we have to protect this person or that person from being criticized, as we continue to sit here and fight over that, we allow the Republicans to just destroy us on all the other issues. And I'm not sitting here at all saying that we should stop criticizing Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi, because in my view, we need to abandon the establishment wholesale. We need to completely wipe the slate clean and rebuild it from this whole thing from the ground up. And Nancy Pelosi may have done some great things. A number of state and county chairs may have done some great things, but their time is up. As of the disastrous 2016 general election, when they failed to prevent the rise of a fascist, an outright fascist, to the presidency of this country, as well as the emergence of a super Republican majority throughout this country. I'm not talking about in Congress, because they don't have a super majority in Congress, but they almost have a super majority in the state legislatures. They almost have enough seats, enough state legislatures to rewrite the Constitution. Think about that. They failed to prevent that. They allowed this to happen. So what makes us think that they still have a right to claim the power, the leadership of this party, a party that they have led into the abyss? And if we are not careful, if we do not wake up now and start a sea change now, this abyss is only going to get darker and deeper. And then we're going to wake up and we're going to be left with our memories of what this once great and free system was. So my plea to you is to wake up, get on those phones, demand action, demand a change. We need to start fighting for working people and start fighting for a better and stronger Democratic Party. That is the closest thing that progressives have right now. We need to, and I hate to say this, because I believe that we need a strong third party. We need multi-party system, or at least a no-party, a non-partisan system. But while we have this bipartisan system, we need to fight for a stronger Democratic Party. And the only way to do that is for progressives to infiltrate the Democratic Party, take leadership positions, and just completely transform it. And then we need to offer a counter message at every level before it's too late. Alright, that's the end of my long rant. Thank you for listening. Good night.